Hello everyone, it is April and today I want to chat with you about what I read in July. I feel like I'm a tiny bit late to chat about this, however, we're still doing it because I have in this list my most anticipated thriller of the year, which turned out to be one of the worst thrillers I've ever read in my life. And I also have the best book that I've read this year thus far. So let's dive in. We've got 8 books. Let's go. The first book I want to chat with you about is Magpie by Elizabeth Day. This follows a couple named Marissa and Jake. They have moved into their dream home. They are preparing to have a child. They're very excited about that. But in order to afford the house and everything, they decide to bring in a roommate, and that roommate is named Kate. It seems fine at first. She seems like perfect for this chapter of their lives. However, soon Kate starts asking really insensitive questions. She just starts creeping her way into their relationship in a way that Marissa does not feel comfortable with, and the story goes from there. This book was marketed as a thriller. I would say it's more of a literary thriller. There is a twist in this book, which I enjoyed, but it's not like there were twists and turns and like things happening every single moment. And there were actually quite heartfelt moments in this book. I liked how it spoke to mental illness. I really loved how it spoke to infertility and the IVF process. You can tell that either Elizabeth Day herself has gone through IVF or someone very close to her has, because this woman knows what it's about and what it's like and the process. And it's kind of interesting to kind of go back in time and be there alongside this couple, because I was like, yep, I remember that. Check, check, check. It felt very, very relatable for me. Though that it is not, in my opinion, a real thriller, I also couldn't put it down. So maybe this book just can't be categorized, but I really did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars and I would highly recommend it. The next book that I read in July is Drink: The Intimate Relationship Between Women and Alcohol by Anne Dowsett Johnson. This is a Canadian author who actually works in the Canadian magazine industry. I was interested in this book because I have been thinking about heart health, and I want to start taking my health a little more seriously, and just make choices in my life that will help my heart in the long run. I'm not the healthiest of gals at the moment, and I would like to better myself. That said, I know that drinking and heart health are slightly linked. And so I thought that I would pick up this book. I thought it would be interesting exploration, nonfiction exploration of drinking. And it turned out to not really be that. Yes, it explored drinking exclusively, but was much more of a memoir. And that was really disappointing. It didn't feel relatable either. And maybe that's a good thing. But I wanted facts and not the story of someone's life. So unfortunately, I only gave it 2 stars. There were also moments in here where she spoke to her ex-husband and spoke about her ex-husband. And it felt, in my opinion, like she was pressuring him to get back together with her. And I just feel like that should be done in private. It felt like that should be done in private. And if I was the girl dating him now, maybe he's not dating anybody, but if he is, that girl, that woman has a lot to be upset about, in my opinion. All that said, yeah, it was just a 2-star read from me. I wanted more research and less memoir, and that's not at all what I got. The third book that I read in July was The Office BFFs by Jenna Fisher, who played Pam in The Office, and then Angela Kinsey, who who played Angela in The Office. I gave this 3 stars. I listened to it because they narrate it themselves. They actually have a podcast as well. And I enjoyed it. I love The Office. Like, when I'm in a bad mood, when we want to set the tone for our evening at our house, we put on The Office because we know it will just make us happy. It will just make us happy. And we like rewatched it over and over and over again. And I think we'll do that until we no longer have access to the show. This book was funny and heartfelt. I learned a few new little tidbits about The Office that I randomly just would tell Barry out of nowhere. It was a very lovely little book. Gave it 3 stars. Enjoyed. Okay, so here we are. We're here to talk about the 4th book that I read in July. So excited to read this book. I bought it with my own money. I was very excited, and it disappointed me greatly. I gave this 1 star. It's The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. At this point, I don't know what to do with Riley because I think the first 3 books that he's written have been my favorites of his. And since then, I've just disliked them. So I don't know what my relationship with him is going to be like going forward. Maybe I'll just library and like borrow his books from the library and see. Okay. The House Across the Lake, to me, had a lot of potential. This follows Casey, who is an actress, and she's gone through some really bad press of late. And so it's decided that for her best interest and for her reputation, she should go away to her cabin. Her family cabin. She goes away to the family cabin. And while she's there, she does a lot of drinking. Like, she is a heavy alcoholic. She drinks all day. Like, in the morning, she wakes up and drinks. Like, heavy alcoholic. And she just basically sits on her little porch and looks out on the lake, and she also kind of spies on the neighbors. So she has binoculars, and she has been looking a lot at the house across the lake, who has a couple living in it, and their names are Catherine and Tom. Catherine was a model and left that life behind for her husband, Tom, who is in social media or some sort of techie thing. One day, Catherine nearly drowns, and actually Casey goes and saves her. They strike up a friendship, and then a couple of days later, Catherine does go missing, and Casey believes that Tom was involved. The premise, interesting, fine. I started reading it, really enjoyed it. It was atmospheric. It felt like I was at the lake. And then it did the thing that pisses me off so much in thrillers. And that is making the twists absolutely impossible to come up with on your own as the reader. It went from a thriller to more of a horror book. This has happened to me in the past, where I've read a book and I'm like, it's fine. And then it does this twisty thing and I'm like, there was no possibility as a reader for me to guess this. It's just not possible because it's outlandish. And it pissed me off. It made me so angry. I hate that so much because for me as a reader of thrillers, I want to have the chance to guess and maybe come up with the right answer. And there was no chance of this. And what I feel strongly about is that it dupes the reader, it tricks the reader, and I think it is ultimately the laziest writing thing that you can do as a writer. Lazy writing. I'm really disappointed in Riley, and I don't know what happened there. But you know what? He doesn't need me. He's a best-selling author. He doesn't need me. I've loved his old stuff. I know that he looked at, I think, Rear Window or something for inspiration for this, but like, come on. Just, no. Ugh. The 5th book that I read in July is Bloomsbury Girls by Natalie Jenner. So this was also the author of the Jane Austen Society, and I'm so happy to report that I like this a whole lot more than the Jane Austen Society. This follows a bookshop called the Bloomsbury Bookshop, and it is in England. I believe this is just after the war, and we follow a group of women who go to work there. And it is an incredibly empowering story. There's a lot of romance, if I'm being honest. There is romance in here, but it's not in your face. It's not overwhelming. I enjoyed it. Took place in the 1950s. I just liked the women and their ability to be there for one another and try to rise in the ranks of a very male-dominated industry. I mean, the entire workforce was a male-dominated industry in the 50s, but it still is. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoyed Bloomsbury Girls. It was very, very lovely. Next up is a memoir nonfiction book. This is The Choice, Embrace the Impossible, or The Possible, by Dr. Edith Eva Eger. This was a hard read because it follows Edith as a child, a teenager, going to Auschwitz as well as other concentration camps during World War II. Her story was incredible. Her ability to survive and survive intact in a way that she kept her dignity, and she was so resilient. It was really, really remarkable. It not only explored what happened to her, you know, before going to concentration camps, but also afterwards, and what her life looked like afterwards, what her family's life looked like afterwards. And I really enjoyed that narrative, because a lot of the time I find stories about the Holocaust, you kind of end with their release, and I really do like to learn how they adapted afterwards, because it's just such a horrific experience, and it was a horrific experience for her as well. But you have so much to learn about the human spirit and the ability to survive in more ways than one while reading this book. I do have another book by her on my, I nearly called it my Kindle, on my Kobo, called The Gift. I want to read that as well. But it was very uplifting, hard to read sometimes, but very empowering. I just really, really enjoyed this. So I gave this 4 stars. Are you ready for the best book that I read this year? Because I read it in July. I was blown away by this book. I could not put it down. I wanted to read it every single moment. And that is The First Day of Spring by Nancy Tucker. This is such a hard book to explain in many ways, because it is a thriller, but it's a literary thriller, in my opinion, because there's so much more substance behind this than just your average thriller. Oh my goodness. This follows a little girl named Chrissy. She is 8 years old, and she has just killed someone when you meet her. She has killed a little boy. She shows no remorse. She is gleeful almost with having done this. And it follows her story as a child, and then also as an adult when she herself has her own child and is harboring, obviously, all of the guilt of having done this from her past, and worrying that this choice that she made, this terrible thing that she did as a child, is going to leave her without her own child, that someone is going to come and take her child away. So you go backwards and forwards in time, and this was just brilliant. I couldn't believe that with that premise, I laughed in this book. I also wept in this book. So I listened to this on audio, and I will say it was really good audio. And I finished reading it, listening to it in the bath, and I was just like tears pouring down my face listening to this. And the ending, it was incredible. This book really does speak to poverty and what poverty can do to people. It explores motherhood, and it explores found family. One of my favorite characters of all time now is Linda, who is Chrissy's childhood friend. I cannot tell you, I implore you to please pick this up, no matter who you are, because I think you'll like it. I just can't imagine anyone not liking this. I don't want to think about someone not liking this because it hurts my feelings. That's ridiculous, April. Stop being ridiculous. In any case, I adored it. I didn't read it in the spring. You don't need to read it in the spring. You should read it any old time. But yes, it starts in the spring. Oh my God. So good. Okay, we're going from like hi to like just eh. The last book I want to share with you is No One Gets Out Alive by Adam Neville. This follows a woman named Stephanie who is very much struggling to survive. She is working paycheck to paycheck, can barely afford her rent. She does go to stay in this house for girls. Like it's a place to rent, but it's only women who are supposed to live there. And when she arrives, she realizes that she really should have done more research because it is screwed up. The place is disgusting and there might be ghosts. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I wanted to like it more. I will say, first of all, I didn't enjoy his writing style. I just didn't connect with it. There's nothing wrong with it per se, but I didn't connect with it. It felt a little hoity-toity, and I just didn't like it. I don't even know if I should have brought that up, but didn't love that. I will say, incredibly atmospheric. This house that she goes to stay in that she wishes that she had not stayed in, so disgusting. Like the carpets felt crispy. Like I really did feel like I was there in a lot of ways, and I did not want to be there because no one would want to be there. So I really appreciated that so much. That's very, very clever writing when you can make the reader feel that. But I will say I wasn't scared. Like I didn't get scared at all. And I feel like I should have at some point in this book because it's, I don't know, 600 pages. And I really feel like at some point I should have been scared and I just wasn't. So sadly, I gave it 3 stars. Not bad, just not, I think I had high hopes and it just didn't quite meet them. That said, those are all of the books that I read in July. I've got some real highs and some real lows in here. Let me know, how was your July in terms of reading? Did you read anything really good? I'd love to know what that was. Let's leave it on a good note. So what was the best book you read in July? Let me know. And I hope you guys are doing really well, and I'll chat with you soon.